Welcome to the Three Stories version of the Todd Herman Show. So if a Tesla worker is unalived by a leftist, is Maxine Waters finally going to be happy? And story number 2, Bernie Sanders thinks God Almighty is a perv. He does. Story number 3, you know the don't die dude? He's announced he is a god, effectively. Talk about this with the help of the real God, that is the God of Abraham, the Holy Trinity, and with the great, great, great assistance in my heart of the Holy Spirit, because this stuff can really make me angry.
The Todd Herman Show is 100% disapproved by big pharma, technocrats, and tyrants everywhere. No. From the high mountains of free America, here's the Emerald City exile, Todd Herman.
Today is the day the Lord has made, and these are the times through which God has decided we shall live. You got to give it to this guy, this lawmaker, who has recovered from what appeared to be a micro stroke, a mini stroke. I'm not trying to be cute. I mean, you probably saw this video. The guy was speaking on the floor and just completely blue screened. And he recovered, but man, I'm not saying I like his politics, because I don't. But he recovered and caught himself. But he is caught up in this Maxine Waters easy bake hate of Elon Musk. And Elon Musk, of course, committing the horrible crime of looking for efficiencies in spending in the government. And here is a lawmaker, and maybe I honestly am not hoping he has another stroke, but this would be a good way to have one if you haven't got whatever was going on with you checked out. Listen to him rant about equal branch of government, and keep that in mind, and keep thinking equal branch of government as they're doing everything they can on the left to stop President Trump from running his equal branch of government.
For an equal branch of government. And you start off with a blather, and yet look at the empty seats here. Where's Elon Musk? I'm sure he's a genius and is a very credible person because of the wealth he's accumulated. But that does not put him above the law or the responsibility to come before this committee in this Congress. If he's so great, if these plans and all the fraud and abuse that he's found are so eminent, why isn't he here explaining it? You know why. Because he's out to privatize Social Security. He's been on television the last couple of days talking exactly about Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
He's talking about them being fraudulently bankrupt. And yes, if he is subpoenaed by Congress, he should respond and come in and just share what he shares with us on Twitter. But do you see that the comparison here? How many times did we have officials who work for figurehead Biden, or rather the people who ran Biden, not come? And when they came, I don't recall. FBI headquarters, never been there. Maybe been there. I don't recall where it is. Did you recall ever being an FBI agent? I don't recall. It slips my mind. And all of a sudden, it's equal branches of government. By the way, that guy's name is John Larson from Connecticut. Now, he seems legit upset, but maybe this is, again, a blood sugar issue. I think he's legit upset because they're watching the entire fiefdom that they have built in such a brilliant, snaky, satanic way. Well, just lies, lording your power over others, stealing, coveting. I mean, that's all deeply ungodly. And they're watching it just be destroyed. And they've got partners in the Mockingbird media who are more than happy to see things destroyed. Wait till you see this CNN host and where they're pointing things, because they're apparently also deeply involved in corruption. And I believe that we will find even more money going to the Mockingbird media. I think that we will find eventually how CNN and MSNBC are getting some of our money, because the corruption is so very clear. And you got to protect yourself against this. My friend Zach Abraham, Chief Investment Officer for Bulwark Capital Management, he's one of the few guys in that business who has been talking this level of corruption for almost a decade. And he doesn't go out and make this his bread and butter, but he wants us to be prepared in our retirement. Part of what he calculates is how bad a position the government's in terms of debt, but also in terms of corruption. He's been doing this forever. So go look into having him handle your retirement. If you're 5, 10, 15 years from retirement, you can't stand a bunch of risk, being a bunch exposed to that. And Zach manages every portfolio actively, which can reduce risk and volatility. So go to knowyourriskradio.com. That's knowyourriskradio.com or call them at 866-779-RISK. Bulwark Capital Management is an investment advisor representative of Trek Financial LLC and SEC registered investment advisor. Investments involve risk, not guaranteed. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Trek 25-137. Here is a CNN host, and is it just me, or do they seem to be sort of, dismissive of the dangers of walking around burning down buildings and Teslas and Tesla facilities?
Like if you are attacking Teslas or dealerships, going beyond vandalism, that could be an act of domestic terrorism. But I do want to ask about this as resistance. Is this what resistance should look like?
So Trump thinks that if you try to cops to overthrow the government and change an election, that's not domestic terrorism, but somehow having a protest in front of a Tesla dealership is. The bottom line with Trump is freedom and liberties belong to people who agree with him, and that's it. That's his view of America. That's not a view that people who believe in our Constitution share.
Okay, so that's Representative Seth Moulton from Massachusetts. The President Trump, who once again said, here's 10,000 National Guard troops to guard the Capitol, and Nancy Pelosi said no, and President Trump, who said, listen to the police, obey the police, they're not our enemies, that same President Trump said those things. Meanwhile, we have Maxine Waters, who isn't saying these things. She's back right up into, I want you to get up in their faces. And you want to talk corruption. Look at her family businesses. Look at the banks. Look at the independent banks, the small banks. Look at her daughter getting to run a direct mail outfit, as Figurehead would call it, the outfit, that benefits directly from her campaign monies. Now listen to the measured tone Maxine Waters takes here, because certainly she doesn't want to see a bunch of violence.
What does Trump expect? Oh, I believe he expects violence. I believe he expects confrontation. I believe he's working toward a civil war.
So his plan to get us to a civil war is to stop the war between Russia and Ukraine. His plan to get us to civil war is to kick cartel members out of our country who are actually here destroying the fabric of people's lives and souls with drugs and with forcing people to rent their bodies out to others. That's a heck of a way to start a civil war, or by going through departments that have demonstrably returned no value to the American people, like the Department of Education. As that thing has grown, it's actually metastasized. It is a cancer on education, as demonstrated by the numbers. There is a reason that homeschool kids achieve more academically than kids who are put through the government schools on a global basis. First of all, it's a smaller portion of people. So there's some hand selection going on that could skew the numbers a little bit. But secondly, there's the concentration of a 2 to 3 hour day in school versus these days filled with mostly not learning, but indoctrination. That's the way to start a civil war? Seems like a heck of a thing to think you could start a civil war on. Now, there's a judge who has gone through and blocked President Trump's cuts to DEI, and this should end. President Trump should say, you know what, Supreme Court, you're going to have to take on this case because I'm not going to follow these district courts anymore. No, I'm not doing it. There's no way our founders intended for these district courts to have sway over the President of the United States. This guy's name is Judge Myung-Hwan. He served on the ACLU board of directors. ACLU's filed hundreds of suits against President Trump. He was the chair of the Boston Municipal Court's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, chair of the Harry J. Elam Conference Committee on Racial Justice, Massachusetts Bar Diversity Task Force. He has conflict of interest everywhere around him, but he's allowed to take on this case. And then a guy who is a district court judge of a very, very small area of the country decides that he now takes sway over the president of the United States of America, and this is being allowed to stand. And John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett had an opportunity to say, nope, district court judges don't get to make nationwide rulings. We're talking now about more cases from district court judges in President Trump's first 10 weeks in office than were ever filed against the figurehead, which takes us right back to the guy who apparently had the mini stroke. And he wants to talk equal branches of government. But of course, this is all unprecedented. We are in uncharted, unprecedented territory. And it is absolutely Hitlerian and tyrannical. And it's the start of a civil war when you start demanding the shutdown of departments that don't do anything for the American people. Now, there was a guy in office who did come in as a divider. Pick a target, isolate it, cut it off from its support base. Who did come into the office trained in Alinsky tactics. Who did come into office dividing. John McCain, I won. Trayvon Martin would be my son. And it's clear the police acted stupidly. Remember him? Well, at least he didn't go try to start a civil war.
Everyone knows that getting rid of the deficit will require some tough decisions. And that includes cutting back on billions of dollars in programs that a lot of people care about. But what should be easy is getting rid of the pointless waste and stupid spending that doesn't benefit anybody. Waste we should be getting rid of, even if we didn't have a deficit. Sure, some of these cuts aren't that big, but no amount of waste is acceptable. Not when it's your money. Not at a time when so many Americans are already cutting back. Just as families are living within their means, government should too. Did you know the federal government pays for a website devoted to a folk music ensemble made up of forest rangers? They're called the Fiddlin' Foresters.
And he's showing the Fiddlin' Foresters. They look like nice people.
I'll put their music on my iPod, but I'm not paying for their website. And there are hundreds of similar sites that we should consolidate or just get rid of. By the way, you're not only paying for websites no one needs, you're paying for thousands of buildings all across the country no one uses. For the last decade, the government's owned a massive and completely empty warehouse in the middle of Brooklyn, for example. Now, the government hadn't been able to sell this building and others like it because of red tape.
Oh, but he's going to take care of this. You wait and see how he's going to take care of this.
But we're finally cutting through all that.
Okay.
And plan to get rid of these buildings in the months ahead.
Oh, and wait, there's some of the buildings. They were pointing the map to San Francisco. President Trump is looking at selling the Nancy Pelosi, I didn't say memorial building because she's vampiric, so she's sort of alive, but not really. Well, but he's getting to the punchline. Get it.
We need to go after every dime.
Let's do it.
We need to make government work for you.
Let's do it.
That's why, starting today, I've asked the Vice President to lead a renewed effort to hunt down misspent tax dollars in every agency and department of this government.
And no one messes with Joe.
We're calling it the Campaign to Cut Waste.
Wow.
I know Joe's the right man to lead it.
Because no one messes with Joe.
Nobody messes with Joe.
No, it is. He said it. He did the meme. Thank you to Maze on Twitter for surfacing that, reminding us all that in order to start a civil war in the United States of America, Barack Hussein Obama promised to cut ridiculous government spending, selling buildings we don't need, shutting down websites we shouldn't be funding. He even had behind him in the video going through contract reviews, and he put in charge of this the perfect guy to put in charge of it. The guy who wouldn't do anything because at that point he wasn't demented. He knew he couldn't cut a bunch of this because then you'd have the Senate and other people in the Senate and the House and other areas of government coming along and saying, hey, Joe, be careful because we know exactly what your family's doing. We know exactly how you're getting your money. Just like he was the perfect guy for them to install in the White House, because why wouldn't it be run by Otto Penn? Because they don't ever have to tell him what he did. Or they could tell him that he did it, and it's up in the polls. And God said, do not lord your power over others. All of it's ungodly.